Welcome to another IT Leadership Lab live stream, and I'm very, very excited to have everyone here. We've got a new face as well too, so really, really excited to have these two folks here to talk a little bit about assessing IT tool value and kind of what different IT tools can bring to your own technology stack, your own environment, business, things like that. If you are new to the IT Leadership Lab, welcome in. This is a community dedicated to IT leaders. You can share content, learn from your peers, build community, ask questions, things like that to kind of help you build a network of IT leaders that are going through the same exact thing or have gone through the same exact thing that you are. And we host these webinars every other week to talk about different IT leadership topics. It might be technology related, like it is today, or it might be more soft skills, like interviewing or trying to justify headcount, things like that. And what we actually do is bring IT leaders within the space that have experience, that have expertise, that can kind of share their knowledge with everyone here and talk a little bit about the things that are important to IT leaders. So before we get started, I want to kind of have both of our panelists here introduce themselves. So Avi, if you want to start a little bit to talk a little bit about your journey in IT,
Sure.
how long you've been doing it and what you're up to now.
Yeah, my name's Abhi. Currently I'm the owner of Barium Networks, an MSP here in Orlando, Florida. I've been doing IT for, oh God, what year is it?
2025.
Yeah, so like 20 plus years. Um, and I started my career even like when I was in school. I was doing IT, helping out the sysadmin at the schools, helping out, taking care of tickets, hardware repairs. And I just kept doing that over and over. I had a bunch of jobs in between here and there, always doing something technical in nature. And then, you know, 20 years later, I finally said, you know what, maybe I want to own a company or start my own business. And I started an IT company um, that other companies rely on us to make sure technology is working, and that's a big part of that is understanding tooling and understanding how to use things properly to the most efficient manner possible.
Sweet. Well, thank you so much for jumping on again. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, glad.
Dana, welcome into your first stream. Do you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your journey in IT?
Absolutely. My name is Dana Brewer, and I am the founder and CEO of Computer Information Station. And we were founded in Oakland, California, currently based in Pinole, California. Yes, sunny California. And my journey, I think, started very similar to Avi's. I was working at another company. Somebody plopped down this, and I'm telling you, one of the original IBM PCs on a desk. Nobody knew what this thing was. And someone showed me how I could sort a list of names and numbers in Lotus 123. And that ignited something in me and got me interested in IT. So I started reading books, bought a computer. Bring it forward to, I started my own consulting company many, many years ago. I've actually been in business for close to 40 years. I've done the highs and lows. We were largely IT consultants working on IT projects. And in the last 3 years, we've moved into managed IT services. And the lovely thing about IT is it kind of doesn't matter where you start or where you end, it's a continuous journey. So even though we've got all of this experience, we have learned and are learning how to be a managed IT services provider as well. So I'm still having fun, still enjoying bringing solutions out there to our clients. And yeah, here to share what I can and looking forward to it.
Yeah, thank you so much. Really, really happy to have you on. That's such a, we were talking about this backstage, but it's such a cool experience seeing your business grow so much and over time and getting to change all of these things and learn all of these new things. So I'm sure you're going to have some awesome expertise to share here. So we're going to talk a little bit today about assessing IT tool value. So what exactly does that mean? So there are a there are a plethora, is a plethora of IT software that can help you do your job more efficiently. It can help IT teams run more efficiently. But if you just look up IT software, it's kind of just a sea of options, and it can be hard to cut through the noise. So you might be asking yourself if some of it is actually helpful, or if you should prioritize certain things over another tool. And we're hoping to clear up some of those questions in this stream and talk to practitioners that actually have the experience with IT tools, and might even bring up some topics that I don't know about and might be able to give their advice there. So my first question to kind of get us started, what does IT software mean? What do you find essential? And then how does that vary from environment to environment?
I mean, I want to just answer your first part. What is IT software? What anything and everything apparently.
Yeah.
So I think for us, one of the things that if we're trying to define, what's really the IT stuff and the tech stuff versus just your generic software, it's anything that can assist you in doing your job as an IT professional. And that goes as far as using a tool like NinjaOne as to manage our endpoints and our devices. It's using a tool like, you can even say ChatGPT to understand an error message a little bit better and more, something that's a little too cryptic to read with our human eyes. Or it could be even something as mundane as email, being able to communicate with our end users, our staff, our clients, our partners. And knowing how to use those tools effectively really is kind of a difficult thing, because sometimes you can do anything with the tool. And how you use it in a manner that makes it clean and easy to understand from an IT perspective. Sometimes, I think I'm excited for the conversation here as well to better understand what in the world it is I'm doing.
I agree with that. I think also for IT companies, probably it shouldn't be a blind spot, but sometimes it is we're so focused on what we're offering to our clients and the stack that we're offering to our clients that we don't necessarily look at our own stack. And one of the things that, is we're a target is for cyber criminals. So what kind of cybersecurity tools do we have around our own environment? And, how are we implementing that so that we can not only protect ourselves, but also protect our customers? So I just wanted to add that to what you said, Avi.
Yeah, no, it's so true. And I think you can kind of extrapolate a little bit more. It's that self-reflection doesn't happen nearly as often as it should. And that can go, we'll have to really get back on track here, but that can go from anything from IT to not IT to your personal life and everything in between. It's important to have that, and to understand that it's not just how you look like externally to other people, but how do you feel to yourself? How are you doing things internally to your own department, your own company, your own organization? And yeah.
And if we were to focus specifically on maybe that productivity and efficiency of an IT organization, what are some of those tools that you do think that are kind of essential in making sure that your team, an IT organization, is as efficient and productive as possible?
Yeah, I'd like to jump in there. Something that was new to me when I converted from just IT consulting firm to managed IT services as PSA, professional services automation tool. Because there are communication tools, and I'm sure we'll talk about that, down the road, but that hub of your single source of truth for your organization, where all of your technicians can go and look at what's happening, who the clients are, what stacks are we provisioning to them, where your sales folks can go and put in their deals, and the sales manager can kind of watch that as it goes. And sometimes for some of us, we're all that it's one person. It's 5 roles, but it's one person. And a professional services automation tool allows you to put a hat on and take that hat off. Managing ticketing, service delivery, billing, all of those things. So I think if anybody's trying to do it today without a PSA, that's a huge mistake, because you're just going to drive yourself crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when I tried learning what a PSA was, for me, coming from the internal IT space, I thought of it more as like an ERP, an enterprise resource planning tool for services companies. So it's everything that your ADP, your NetSuite, your, I don't know, other ones that, what those tools do, like Dynamics 365. You could technically run your whole IT department on Dynamics, or you could run your IT services organization on Dynamics, but it's not geared directly towards the IT or the service industry specifically. And when I'm looking at tools that are kind of like bread and butter to making sure that my IT department or my IT company can function, I want something that helps me do the job. So I have to reflect and understand, okay, what it is, like, what's my day to day? When someone has an issue, what do I actually do? Am I just resetting a password? Am I having to go in and look at Event Viewer and see why a blue screen happened? Am I trying to pull that mem dump? Am I trying to install a piece of software across 100 computers? Do I need to inventory 1,000 computers and figure out how much RAM each one has, so that way we know which ones to replace first or upgrade first? And some of my thought processes come when I worked for a rather large school district, and I had to inventory 50,000 computers. And I had to figure out what the specs were for 50,000 computers as an intern. So I learned quite a bit, right? So what I'm trying to get to is the tools that you need are things that will help drive your job itself. Like with the PSA, it's how do you track the tickets? How do you know what that client needs? How do you know what that department needs? For your RMM or your internal tool, whether you're using something like, I started with Altiris, if anyone knew that, or Landesk, now Ivanti, right? People in the MSP space are like, oh my God, Landesk, Ivanti, not great. But on the internal enterprise side, it's a whole different story. But those are tools that help me deploy software to 1,000 computers in one button click. Or it's a tool that helps me document my processes and my information. If I'm looking at my browser tabs right now, I have pinned, I have my RMM, my PSA, my cloud management tool, I have my documentation, my security platforms, the things that are, my network management tool, everything that just gives me information, and probably things that can be bundled and integrated into a single pane of glass with my PSA or similar.
Yeah, I wanted to dovetail off of that. You said the words I was going to say, single pane of glass, because anyone who's looked at PSAs know that they are beasts. They are beasts because they have to be, because they're really helping you to manage and run your entire business. But then on the other side of that is, how will you as a team communicate and collaborate internally? So you also have to look at those, I will say, softer tools, things like Slack or Teams or Zoom. How are you going to deliver the actual service? What standards are you going to set for your team members to communicate amongst themselves? Some of us probably have, if we have teams, they may not all work out of the same building. The world has changed. So we're in different places geographically providing services to clients. So that's also a very important consideration. And it's a good one to establish, because if you don't, then everyone's going to come in with what they use and what they like. And then you're going to have a disjointed system. So it's really good to look at that as a management team, or as a manager, as a business owner. How are we going to proceed forward, and what's going to work for my team, so that there's no dropped balls because we've missed a communication somehow.
Yeah. I mean, that's something that I have learned a lot from all of these streams is that a big part of leadership is communication and making sure that those loops are constantly they're constantly going, and that you're constantly being able to talk to everybody that is a stakeholder in it. And so I think that's a really important point, is if you don't have a communication platform, how are you actually doing all of this stuff? And sure, you can just do everything in email, but that's not going to work.
Right.
Yeah, but I think it's important when you think about it too, is like combining your email and your instant message platforms into one. Because the nice thing about an email is when you think about that communication, you can reply all to the thread and everybody is privy to the information. Everyone's kept in the loop. Then you go to a Teams chat. How often are they in the channel or with a team, and how often are they one-on-one? And when you're having that one-on-one conversation, all of a sudden, the rest of the parties, the rest of the team doesn't know what's going on. And then you have to fill them in. And you're just wasting time.
Right.
But how do you balance that with overcrowding shared chat space, the group chat? And does your blood boil when you're like, I don't want my threaded replies and I don't have access to threaded replies because reasons to different platforms, and but then it's also, how do you search that? How do you organize it? And while this might sound like there's no hope and there's no saving grace, it's you have to just understand the tool, understand what you're trying to accomplish, and use them to your best of your ability to really communicate effectively and properly across whatever pathway you're trying to take there.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point too, because there are, and I'm really glad we're having this discussion, because there's just a glut of tools. And what we don't want to do is go after the thing that's shiny, that someone says, oh, hey, I use this, and then we try that. One of the things that we found with our clients is they've got 20 tools and they use 1% of 2 of them, to be able to come in and say, what is it that you actually do? What is it that you want to do? Now, how do you do those things? And then find the tools that can help with that. Because, the goal is, at the end of the day, you want to deliver consistent results. You want your service to be reliable, and you want it to be efficient for you. Otherwise, how are you going to make money, right? So, this is, I think it's important to, look at what the aspects of your business are, what may already be automated and working for you, and then really seriously look at the tools that are out there, and, do your research and pick one and see that thing through. Because far too often in some of the portals that and groups that I'm in, someone will say, I just installed XYZ. What do you guys think? Well, they're asking the question after they've installed the tool. And, then 9 out of 10 people are probably going to, poo-poo on that software that they've chosen. So I think this is really good. I love the fact that you have this open forum so we can discuss these things. And just like Abby said, we learn as well. So it's very important.
Yeah. And what does that evaluation process usually look like? Like, what are the things that you actually try to consider in that process?
Right now, for me, it's just completely disregarding any company that wants to only give me a 14-day trial. It's like, I need 15 days. If you're only going to give me 14 days, I don't know how to figure out whether or not I like it. But I think one thing that you can do is, when you are figuring out what tool you're using, and I'm going to keep picking on NinjaOne, mainly because I love NinjaOne, and Brittany's a big part of that. But, is NinjaOne the right tool for you? What does it do? And you can read the marketing materials, and sometimes that doesn't really help you understand what the software actually does. And that's why you have to kind of read the reviews, look at it from the perspective of other people in the same position as you, whether that's a position as an individual contributor in the IT department, as a manager, whatever it might be. And you have to see, what can that tool actually accomplish? And does it solve a problem I'm currently having? Is it just a nice to have thing? or was what we're doing today taking up too many resources, whether those resources are human time, money, server power, right? Whatever the resource is, you have to understand whether or not what you are looking at is actually going to help you accomplish whatever it is you're trying to figure out. It's not that shiny new tool, right? We love it to be the shiny new tool, but sometimes you have to figure out, okay, do I want the shiny new one, or do I want the one that's a little dull but is established, working, a workhorse, and isn't brittle?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think so. You spoke to, is it going to bring some value? Is it really going to save us some time? I think another consideration is what we all want. We all want to establish our businesses and we want to grow. So can this tool grow with us? Is it scalable? And what is it going to take for my team? And I say that because some of us wear multiple hats. So what is it going to take for me to really wrap my hands around this tool? And is it going to be a $15,000 investment because it's so difficult to implement that we now have to pay the vendor to implement it in our environment? That's another consideration, not just the out the door cost, but also what is it going to cost over the long term in terms of actual implementation? And what is the user experience going to be for my team? Will the tool allow for interaction and connectivity for my customers, or is it just an internal tool? So those are also a couple of things to really look at, and to include your team in that discussion as well, because it's, as I said, some of them out there are beasts, and and the shiny sales materials, they make it look like, oh yeah, you just get our tool and you'll be up and running in days. And no, it's not quite days, not for a PSA, and, for example. It takes a little while, but if you plan well, and you ask yourself the right questions and you are sure that this can answer them, it's a rewarding process because you learn so much about the industry and about this business that you're running and growing.
Yeah, yeah. Now you're talking about these like beasts of software, and we talked about that single pane of glass, right? Where all of your, or maybe not all, but a lot of your functionality is in that single platform. What would make you want to invest in a separate, more specialized platform that does one thing really, really well over or in addition to that single pane of glass? Is there some kind of software that would make you want to make that kind of investment in something more specialized? I don't know if that question made sense, but
Yeah. The way I'm interpreting that, at least, is, when let's say you're a one-person department, a one-person company, or you're even like 3 or 4 people, are you going to get the efficiency increases or the productivity increases from that highly specialized tool versus just sticking it out with something today? And that goes back to also, like, what's the onboarding cost? Do you have the time to invest in that? And as much as, like, for us, when I started my company, I didn't have a PSA because I couldn't afford to have a PSA. It was thousands of dollars to start. It's just expensive. But as we grew and we progressed, I'm like, okay, I'm starting to do things that are taking too much time. And I can understand, okay, yes, I have the processes in place. I've created my automation workflows through my self-hosted N8N instance. I've created some logic and built things out manually and done these things, and they work fine. But how much time am I spending maintaining those things? And can I use a tool like a PSA to replace 50% of what I'm doing? So that way I don't have to maintain it. It's just part of the platform as a built-in functionality. Or it's cases where you need to just look at it from a more holistic perspective. Is what you're trying to purchase or what you want, is that acquisition being driven by an actual true need or by some extraneous factor? And I don't know, sometimes it's a little hard for us to tell the difference when you're in the trenches, but you really have to kind of like take a step back and look at whether or not that tool is actually going to help. You have to kind of like put a dollar cost on your time and then extrapolate that and say, okay, is that acquisition cost of the new tool cheaper than the amount of time we're spending over X number of weeks or months?
I think another important consideration there is you have to look at your customer base as well, because there are some folks who are, maybe 90% Mac shops. That's what they do. They're experts at it. And maybe they only have a few PCs. And then there are some that are, 90% PCs and they only have a few that are Macs. So there could be let's say, for example, an RMM tool that is great at managing Macs and horrible at PCs and vice versa. So that might be a case where you might need a highly specialized tool. Maybe what you're using, the other tools that you're using work fine for the majority of the workflows. But perhaps for the RMM portion, you need something that can really get in there and that can speak to a Mac. So is that tool, is it going to provide the value over the little bit that you may get from what you have? Like, do you really need it to accomplish, like Avi said, what you're trying to accomplish with those Macs? Will that other tool sufficiently manage those computers? Will it push out the updates? Can you send patches through and things like that? So that's maybe a way to look at it, so that you might have your massive PSA, or at least a group of tools that you use, and you love, and then you might need from time to time to get a highly specialized tool depending on your client base.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And Abby had mentioned obviously the cost. Cost is one of the biggest factors in making a decision on different tools. So how do you kind of go about making those calculations on if the cost of a tool is actually worth it in the long run? Are there any specific ways that you measure those metrics? And how do you go about that?
I think it depends on the tool. And kind of, I think there's a way in my head, at least, I'm relating this back to the last thing we just talked about. Dana, you mentioned that you can be all the hat, you're wearing every single hat in the company, right? And think of it how you would another department or another company or your client or whatever it is. Do you do you just keep handling the IT staff, the IT internally as the CEO, as the office manager, or do you hire an IT services company? Or as a company, as an owner, business owner, or department lead, do you handle all the budgeting and accounting and finance yourself? Or do you hire an accountant and a bookkeeper? Do you do the legal stuff yourself? Or do you actually hire an attorney? It's hard to say what, like whether or not you can put a ROI on some amount of some tools, some software. But you have to extract some information from what you're trying to accomplish. Do you now solve tickets faster? Do you have an actual handle on your network management, so you have an inventory of all your network gear and you can tell whether or not warranties are expiring weirdly for one model versus another? One thing that I love from the company Backblaze, they do their quarterly drive stats survey. They record every single hard drive by model and storage size, and they can record and see which hard drives are failing faster or slower than others. Now, this is a company that has thousands upon millions of hard drives, so they have the data. but think about what they can accomplish. They can be like, oh, there's an issue with this particular firmware or this particular model of hard drive. We can proactively get ready to replace those, saving us money in the long run because there's not going to be downtime. We can plan out that as a project rather than as an emergency. But also we can we can maybe issue a fix upstream and help people out that also have the same thing. That's a little harder to put an ROI on, but think about all of the things that didn't happen, all the bad things that didn't happen because you had the information to proactively fix something ahead of time. And that's the true value of what your software is.
Mm-hmm. That was fabulous, Avi. I also think it's important sometimes, depending on, we all come from different places and spaces, and we start our businesses from different starting points, and we learn a lot as we go. One of the things that I think is really important is learning how to understand your numbers. And sometimes we skip that part just a little bit because we go out there, we win a client, wow, I'm making money, and I've paid for my expenses and I have some money left over. Well, we do need to take a little bit of a step back, and each tool, just like each employee, has a value to the company, and that value comes with the price. And so we need to evaluate the tool. It needs to be a line item, on our financials, so we understand what this cost would be, not just that out the door, but over time in terms of human resources and time and updates and patches. We may not be able to go far into the future, but I think if we don't take that serious step and maybe less fun step of adding it as a line item and being able to actually evaluate what it will cost us, that would be a mistake, because as some of us have learned, we might start and it might be hunky-dory, and then we get to the 6 weeks of the implementation, and then we realize, oh my goodness, I don't know the half of this thing. So really a smart move, like Abby said, no, don't give me 14 days, I need 15 so that you can really evaluate how this tool is going to fit into your environment. And if sometimes we can buy a thing, but sometimes we can't afford that thing. We need to know, can we afford it? How does it fit into our budget?
Mm-hmm. And the budget's not just financial, right? The budget's time. My number one thing as a business owner is just not having any time to onboard a new platform. Sure, it's only $20 a month. Great. But am I going to actually use it? I canceled my Netflix subscription, not because I can't afford it, but because I wasn't using it. Right. I just never had the time to actually sit down and watch a movie. I may as well just get them from other sources. There's plenty of free ways to get movies. Like YouTube has a bunch of free movies on it even. If I want to watch a quick movie, maybe that's the route I take. But it's important to kind of look at it from every different angle. It's not just the financial, it's not just the time, it's not just we're having one issue in tech. It's the holistic view of everything that goes into running a department, running a business, running an organization. And I think the one thing that can help a lot of IT techs that want to be leaders is to see it from the other viewpoint. Put yourself in your boss's shoes and try to understand all the different touch points they have to deal with. That's hard. That's hard to wrap your head around.
Yeah. That was going to be one of my follow-up questions, is if you are an IT leader that, has to report to executives, as, maybe you're a manager, you have a director, you have a CIO, things like that. How do you kind of justify the spend on something like this when it's maybe not as, maybe it's not as firm as, we need this to run the business. We need to run this. We need this to run the business more efficiently.
Right. There's no tangible aspect to it compared to we need to hire more salespeople so we can get more sales, so we can get more business. right? Easy to
Yes.
comprehend for most people.
Yeah. Yeah.
For us at least, what we try to do is, a big thing in the IT space is cybersecurity. It's pulling in the information from that Verizon report, pulling in the information from your insurance provider, and just getting more data like what does it cost when someone in our industry, for our size, in our geographic location, when something goes wrong, how much does it cost to fix? Is your health insurance worth it? Do you have an ROI on your health insurance? Well, how much is it going to cost if you suffer an injury? Is your home insurance worth it? Is there an ROI on home insurance, car insurance? It's really hard, and this is why actuaries get paid so much. But you have to think about what's being prevented or what's being improved by this new tool or this new software or this new procedure or policy, anything that you're trying to implement. And this goes, I think, beyond the software too, like anything you're trying to implement.
Mm-hmm.
What is being fixed? What is being improved? And how much would it cost if that thing that was bad happened? Or how much would it cost if we were doing this the old-fashioned way versus today? And it's not an easy ask, but if you can get to a ballpark number, you have a much better understanding of, wow, okay, we were spending $50,000 a month on this process before. Now we're only spending 30. We just saved $20,000 a month. That's, $250,000 a year.
Yeah.
I like how you touched on that, because it's evaluating our pain points just like we would a customer's. It's that internal look. We're really good at that. Going into our customer's environment, asking them questions, keying in on their pain points, and also helping them not to just look at what's shiny, but to look at what's going to work, what's going to provide them, some benefits. So again, looking internally with our teams, with our service that we're providing, and making sure that we're actually, like you said, solving a problem. Is this really a pain? And is this thing going to bring us some benefits? Because some of us and some in the audience have probably also seen that no, it's some of the tools just don't. It was shiny, it was cute, it was awesome, and we bought it and it sat on the shelf, kind of like a Netflix subscription does sometimes.
Yeah.
And
that's happened to us. Like I'm currently paying for a subscription that's not cheap for a tool that could be really useful, but it's not useful enough where I'm like, I could just do this the other way and not spend $300 a month on this, right? And that's a single tool for us, but now extrapolate that to what an enterprise would be using, right? You might be saying you have to go really ingrained. We helped out a client that used to give every single one of their employees an Adobe Acrobat Professional license, because it's just like, if you have access, if you need to do PDF editing, great, you have access to the tool. And then slowly then we're like, okay, we're spending a lot of money on this. Do we actually need it? Are we using the Pro? Do we need standard? Does everybody need standard? What's going on? And then it started being, okay, we can go from having 10 licenses down to 3, a 70% reduction. Now take that to a 50,000 person enterprise. Imagine if you had a 70% reduction in software costs, right? The bonus should hopefully come to you at that point if you make that happen.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I also wanted to ask about trials. So you had mentioned the 14-day, 15-day trial. What are some things that you look for in that trial period? Do you want obviously you want full access to everything, but what are some things that you do in that trial period to see if it will actually work for your business?
Contact support.
Yes, a lot.
Yeah. If I need to be able to know that my sales team is not going to abandon me and I won't have access to, right? That's happened too many times where the sales process is so good. They have the the vendor has the new customer acquisition process down pat. And you're like, as a business owner, I'm jealous. I'm like, wow, how are you doing this so well? And then they have the service delivery part terribly.
Mm.
And that's something that we constantly want to check on is what's it going to feel like? What's the relationship with this vendor, this software going to feel like 6 months down the line, 2 years down the line, 5 years down the line? Is it still going to, are we going to have the support we need? Is it going to do the things we need to do? Is it easy to comprehend, or do we need to hire that vendor to spend $15,000 on consulting costs, right? Like those aren't just random things that Dana said. Those are real things that we've seen, real instances where if you don't fully understand the cost of like an ERP, that could be a 6-figure onboarding, right? Like those consulting costs are huge. And if you don't see that full picture, it's just really hard to recover from that.
Mhm.
Yes, I agree. We made a rookie move, as I mentioned, because we'd never used a PSA before. Not new to IT, but new to managed IT services, and just wrapping our heads around what all that really meant.
Mhm.
And we got into an implementation that was supposed to be 6 weeks, and it ended up not being 6 weeks. And I didn't negotiate well on the beginning side, but I definitely did on the back side. And I got someone from their organization to pretty much white glove us through to stand up. Now that is not going to happen very often. And so we have to do well at negotiating, knowing what we want out of the product, literally sitting down and writing out, perhaps, this is the problem we wanted to solve. Setting up before you get into the trial what your user testing is going to look like, what those criteria are, and what gets a pass. How do you know it passed? And then if it's a one-person shop, or you've got a team, assign each person the section of that software that they're best at, and have them literally wail on that thing with real examples, and maybe some of your worst examples of something that you delivered to the client that was over budget, over time, caused some people to pull out their hair. Some people wanted to quit after that thing. Take that and throw that at the tool and see what it does for you. And does it deliver a smoother, cleaner process for you? And could you see yourself implementing this to your team? That I think is really, really important, because if you deal with it like it's the shiny, cute thing, and you're just kind of, oh, I'll touch a little bit here and I'll touch a little bit there, you will have a rude awakening if you decide to go for it, and then bam, they dump it into your environment and you're stuck with some things. So really important to know what you're going to test going in to that trial, and definitely negotiate a little bit more time, and don't back down from that negotiation, right? I think that's important for us.
And I think one thing to add to that is like the people that are helping you onboard the software, the consulting, is like usually you'll never talk to them ever again once the project's over, right? So ask the stupidest questions you can think of. Don't worry. No one's judging you. Constantly be like, oh, does the software do this? Like, I want to do this, 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 and this. Can I do that there? And they'll be like, no. Or, oh, yeah, yes, we can totally do that, right? And that helps you be like, okay. While this, this is going to sound terrible from an IT perspective, but sure, a real database solves all of my problems, but Excel's good enough for most of the things people are doing, right? Like, they're not putting in a real amount of data into Excel. I just want to sort some tables. Do I really need a SQL database spin up? Probably not. Even though there's so much you can do with a true database, you might not always need it in every situation. And the same goes for a lot of IT software. Whatever you're trying to implement, unless it can really do the one thing you need really, really well, are you just, what's that phrase? Putting makeup on a pig. You know, it's cool, it's great, but at the end of the day, it still wants to play in the mud.
That's a very, very fun comparison.
I hadn't heard that. I love that, Avi.
Yeah, I mean, great points. I think that, Dana, that is a great way to approach it, like taking a look at every single thing that you want to cover and actually having somebody like assigned to specific things. That's a great way to approach it. I mean, it reminds me a lot of, we just bought a car last week, and yes, very exciting, but we went into it and we were like, these are the things that we need to have. These are the things that would be nice to have. And, I think that there were some things that we forgot to even think about and get really granular on, like, do our seats remember exactly where they are? Like, do they have the seat memory? Just like
Isn't
little
that crazy?
things like that.
Little tiny first world problem, but it's such a big deal.
Yeah.
And you're just like, oh, I didn't even think about that when I was looking at the cars. And, by no means am I disappointed. I love our car, but I'm like, oh, I didn't even think to look at that little thing. And so I think that's a great point, Dana, is to like go into it with those things that you want to have, and then remember to get into those nitty gritty pieces, and make sure you're evaluating it.
Yeah.
At a deeper level.
There's no detail, no feature, no desire too big or too small. Write it all down.
Yes.
Like when I was looking to buy a house, I wrote down the dumbest things, like what type of baseboard I liked, or versus which type of baseboard I hated. Right? Like these small details that no one is paying attention to in the grand scheme of things. How often are you actually looking at your baseboard? Not very often. Well, hopefully you're cleaning it, right? But it's those small things are quality of life improvements that you're trying to solve with your software. You're not just trying to make it easy for you to deploy software across your 5,000 endpoints. Like, is it actually easy to do that? Is it a simple process to upload your software package to the platform, assign it to the computers? Does the system monitor and be like, oh, hey, that computer doesn't have it installed, we're going to try installing it? And does it just be like, you have to click this button every time when you want to install it, you figure it out on your own? And unless you try to put the software through its paces, you're not going to discover those weird abnormalities. And you just really have to, during the trial period, there's no risk. Just abuse it as much as you can and try to do everything that you might think you might need. And eventually you'll figure out whether or not that software actually does the thing you want it to do, or it's just a little too shiny.
Makes me think about buying a sports car. Since you mentioned cars, Brittany, you go test drive the Porsche, and you get on the freeway doing 55 miles an hour. You might want to find that back road, and put your foot on the gas just a little bit, right? But that lets you see if you're looking for that rush, did you get that rush? Did it give you what you came for? Because if not, you might not, unless you can take it on to the Autobahn, you might not really get to know. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I also wanted to talk a little bit about, you had mentioned the actual process of, negotiating contracts and things like that. Do you have any tips for people once they actually find the tool that they want to invest in, once they've gone through that trial period? What does the actual negotiation and buying process look like, and how can they improve their negotiations?
That's a tough one, because that's an area where, especially for new business owners, it might take some time. There's a learning curve even to learning how to negotiate. And even when you've run a business for a long time, we constantly need those reminders that, you go into it with knowledge. You don't go into it from a position of weakness. You've got to go in with some power.
Mhm.
So the fact that they want to sell this tool is your leverage, but you're also going to leverage, does this tool deliver what you're looking for? So one suggestion would be not to just look at one tool, but to evaluate, find if you're looking at 5 tools, for example, find maybe 2 of those 5 or 3 of those 5. Take a deeper dive into those, and then see if it's possible for you even perhaps to concurrently test. I would advise doing that. But here's where it comes down to, not paying sticker price. Just like we don't do that when we're going to buy a car. We want to negotiate that price based on the value of that car, that tool, that whatever it is to us. So I think assessing how closely it fits the criteria that you're looking for, and maybe you use a point system. Don't, maybe not too crazy, 1 to 5. Give each one of those criteria a point, or a value. And once you know the value to yourself, it actually will put you in a better place to negotiate price with that vendor. Because they're not just saying, well, yes, it can do all of these things. You now are in a position of knowledge. You know what your budget is, and you know what others are selling for their products. And so if you have at least 2 that are very similar, that would be my starting point, at least, that I'd have, a really clear understanding of what am I going to get? What are other people paying for it? And it's actually a question that I ask. I don't shy away from finding other users of that product and asking them flat out, if you don't mind me asking, what are you paying per license? In these groups, we can do that kind of thing. And some folks won't share, but some will. And that information, that data can also help you in your negotiation. So you're not paying too much for what you get.
Mhm. Yeah.
One thing that you can try to, or one thing to be cautious of is when there's some feature that's missing or some functionality that's not in the software and the vendor says, oh, we're working on it. It's probably going to be released in Q3. I've been burned enough. Like I fully understand maybe your company's coming up with new features constantly. Maybe your CEO's name is Sal. Cool, great. Or I don't believe you, and I don't think you're going to actually get that that feature done. So if that's something that's really important to you, that functionality is very important to your business, make them put it in writing that it's part of what you need. And you're willing to sign the contract today, but if they don't come up with a product or that feature in 6 months' time or whatever it is, it gives you the right to walk away because that's something super vital to your business. Now, that's really hard to negotiate, and you're probably not going to have, it's legal's probably going to be like, no, we're not going to even think about that.
Yeah.
But you have to ask. Even if you know the question's no, you have to ask so that way, hopefully, some other incentive is brought up. And it sounds mean, especially with myself as a business owner, being in sales. Treat that salesperson like they're trying to win a prize. Like, what are you going to do to win my business? What are you going to be able to give me? Because I can look at this other vendor, this other platform, this anything else, right? I don't need your software. I want it. What are you going to do to help me and help yourself with this deal?
Yeah,
I love that.
It's psychological warfare. We all play it. You gotta, really lean into it.
There's a reason I'm not a salesperson. I'm not a decision maker. I don't purchase things because I'm a pushover. I'm a total pushover. You'll never catch me doing anything like that. Because if I were a salesperson, I would say, hey, are you interested in this? And they'd say no. I'd be like, okay, sorry for bothering you.
Yeah.
So.
Which brings up another good point. If you are the buyer and you're not in sales, you need one of your sales team buddies along with you on those negotiations, because they speak the same language. Meet beforehand and basically just say to them, okay, if you were going to buy this, how would you go about it? And if you were going to sell this, how would you go about it? And that way, maybe they can give you some feedback on both sides of the table, and you can walk in there, guns blazing, ready to rock and roll. And I love the fact that you mentioned, Abby, let them know, I'm willing to sign this contract, but this is what it needs to state. And if they're hungry, they'll go. You may not win every time, but at least they can see where you're coming from. And I love that you mentioned the incentives, because maybe they can't give a little in this area, but maybe they can sweeten the deal. And that's exactly what happened with us, with our PSA purchase. We got several tools that were add-ons. We got them added in for free, because I kind of went in with guns blazing. I'm not the most convincing salesperson either, but I had my sales manager in on all of those negotiations with me, and we survived, and we're happy. And you can be too. Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. Thank you all so much for joining today. I really appreciate it. We're coming up on time, so I want to make sure that we don't go over too much, but really awesome information here. Thank you again for your time, your energy, all of that. I know that y'all are both very, very busy, so I appreciate you taking some time out to talk today. And thank you for everybody in chat that joined as well. We'll be back in a couple of weeks. We'll be talking about asset management specifically. So we'll be talking about how IT managers can, yes, a very juicy topic. We'll be talking about some of those best practices when it comes to asset management.
That's gonna be a fun one.
Yeah, it'll be a good one. So that'll be in a little bit less than 2 weeks. So not next Tuesday, but Tuesday after. So, but yeah, thank y'all for joining again. And yeah, really good to have you on, Dana. Welcome to the lab. So
thanks. Looking forward to continuing.
Yeah,
It was a good time to meet you, Dana.
Yeah, you too, Abby.